Hooray! Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Two Funny Astronauts. I'm half of the Funny Astronauts, Garrett Reisman, and I'm here with...
And I'm Mike Massimino, the other half, apparently.
the better half.
Depends on your point of view.
Yes. So welcome to our show. Today, we are going to be talking about late-night television.
Late night television. Okay, let's talk about late night television. Did you watch late night television when you were a kid, Garrett? Was that like...
I was not allowed to stay up. I was only... Eventually, they let me stay up to watch The Love Boat, but I had to go to sleep before Fantasy Island.
And that was only on Saturday.
That's right.
Those shows were on Saturday.
On school nights.
Yeah.
No, I was not allowed to stay up that late. When I got older,
yeah.
when I wasn't like a little kid, then I watched a little bit of Tonight Show, whatnot.
Yeah, I loved watching the Tonight Show when I was like in high school, and I got to see a couple tapings with Johnny Carson as the host. Yeah, I went to one. It was the guests were George Carlin and Richard Pryor on the same show.
Wow,
which was pretty cool. These two very funny.
Yeah,
those are two funny comedians.
Those guys are legit funny.
Yeah, they were really funny. So that was a long time ago. I always like late night. You know, I always like late night TV. Still do. And you kind of got into it on your flight. You struck up a conversation relationship with Colbert.
Yeah.
And, on your first space flight, right?
It was funny how that came together. It was completely unplanned. So what happened was, except I kind of precipitated. So what it was
kind of unplanned, except I made it happen.
It's kind of unplanned, except
you made it happen.
It's kind of all my fault.
Okay.
So here's what happened. So we're fans of the Colbert Report, his show on Comedy Central at the time, and I'm watching the show one day with my wife Simone, and we're sitting there like about a month before I go off to launch. And it was when he hurt his wrist, and he was making fun of the proliferation of all those rubber bracelets that people used to wear for like every single cause known to man, right? They had rubber bracelets for everything. There's like a rubber bracelet for like biting your tongue. You know,
do they still have those? Those things are still maybe not as popular as they were. They were very popular going back. When was this? This is like 04,
I think it all started. Didn't it all start with Lance Armstrong with like the Live Strong?
Live Strong, that's right.
And I guess when he fell out of favor, the bracelets kind of went away. But
maybe that's what happened. But about 15 years ago, I think. Right? Yeah. When did you fly? When was that? That was in.
So this was 2008 when this was going on.
2008.
So, 13 years ago.
Cool.
So I'm sitting on the couch, we're watching the show, and he hurt his wrist, so he made up a bracelet for the wrist. It's called wriststrong instead of like right. And he was selling these things, and he was just goofing on the whole fad of these things. And I thought, it'd be funny. I should get one, take it up with me to space, and wear it, and see if anybody notices. Right. So that was the idea, just like as it'd be a fun little Easter egg for fans of the show that maybe they'll notice. I figured it can't hurt anything on the space station. It's just a piece of rubber. It's not like gonna mess with any of the electronics or nothing. So I got one and I just put it in my pocket in my spacesuit. And it showed up in the mail like the day before I was going into quarantine. It like just showed up on time. It cost like $5. And I get this thing in the mail and I stick it in the pocket of my spacesuit. And I get up to the space station. I start wearing it, right? And nobody really noticed because you can't really see. It's just a little tiny red thing. And except for my buddy Stu. So my buddy Stu, he saw it. He knew what it was. All right. So he sent it to his book agent because he's a writer. Stu is a writer. He's written a lot of these kids' books. He writes young adult fiction. He wrote Spy School and Belly Up and Space Case. I helped him out with that one, actually. Anyway, he's a writer. And he's told it to his book agent. His book agent was, at the time, dating somebody that we both know, Annie, who's now my manager, right?
Okay.
And Annie used to work at Def Jam Records, and she worked on a TV special for Willie Nelson.
I'm getting totally mixed up, man. Willie Nelson.
Stu tells it to his book agent, who tells it to Annie, who tells Willie Nelson, who tells the producer of the Colbert Report, who also worked on their TV special together, Tanya Bracco. And Tanya gets the picture. So it goes on an email from Stu to this guy Simon to Annie to Willie Nelson to Tanya, and it ends up on Stephen Colbert's desk. This picture of me wearing the bracelet up, and he goes, "That's awesome. I want him on the show." And it comes back through Tanya to Willie to Annie to everybody. Back and gets it back up to me in space. Then this email, and I was like, oh crap. Because I'm in big trouble now because NASA Public Affairs is going to freak out that this was all, none of this went outside the carefully planned public affairs plan that they have, right?
Right.
So I sent it to our public affairs guy in Houston, and he freaked out. He's like, never in a million years are we ever letting you on that show. It's completely inappropriate.
You want to share which guy it was, do you? Because I can guess. Don't say the name.
His name rhymed with Nod Ravius.
Okay, a different guy. No, I thought it was a different guy who I used to call him Dr. No. Because all he would say was no.
Who was that guy?
Another guy. But he had to call him Dr. Because I would hand him more like the press. It would be like, it didn't matter what it was no. Like you can understand if it was some sort of, I don't even know, make up like a periodical that's not appropriate. But it would, no matter who it was. New York Times wants an interview. No. Whatever it was, no.
There's a lot of that. No. It was. I remember when on 132 we were up there and we got a request from let's see, which one was it? At that point it was it Leno or Letterman? I think it was actually Letterman.
Letterman went to your launch because I was there with him at your launch. So he went to your. It might have been
right. So Letterman was at our launch, and then he wanted to interview us live on his show.
Yeah,
like a couple nights later, and NASA said no, it's too late. We can't schedule it. It's much more important that we have you talk to this like elementary school class in Kentucky, which is what we have. Which is like it was like 12 kids watched us instead of like the entire broadcast audience of David Letterman. It's like, that's real. That's good. That's good marketing.
Well, let's say that there's nothing wrong with speaking to 12 kids at an elementary school in Kentucky from space. That's wonderful.
There is nothing wrong with that.
But as far as if you're trying to reach a lot of people, David Letterman was very popular. And
if your job is NASA Public Affairs, your job is to promote the space program. You're going to reach a few more people on Letterman. That's all.
And those kids can watch it. They could have watched you on Letterman. They could have taped it if it was up past their bedtime. If they had parents like yours, I wouldn't let you watch late after the Love Boat or whatever. They could have taped it, and they could have showed it to these kids. They still could have benefited. Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Absolutely. And at the same time, we also had a request from Leno because Jane Krakowski, who I went to elementary school and junior high school with Jane Krakowski, who was on 30 Rock. She played Jenna on 30 Rock, and she was on that. What's that show she does now?
I don't know.
Oh, she was on Schmidjadoon recently. On
you making that one up? I never heard of that one.
No. It's really funny. You should watch.
30 Rock is not on any longer.
30 Rock. Well, it's on Netflix, I guess, but
reruns.
Anyway, she was on that. What's the one with the woman that Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt? She was in that. Anyway, so she was going on Leno and wanted to talk to me live on the air, and NASA said no, because we're too busy.
Did you get this request? Did you know about this request, or did you find out about it after?
I knew about it, and she ended up talking because I took a script from the 30 Rock guys, all signed the script, and we were really, So anyway, she went on the show. She talked about it on the show. She said, my script is up on the space station right now. My buddy Garrett's up there, and I'm getting these emails. She held up her phone and showed the text or whatever, and but NASA wouldn't let us on the show because that would not have been a good use of our time. So instead, we ended up taking questions from a Rotary Club in Kansas City.
I'm kind of amazed at the way some of these decisions are made. We went in our flight my second flight in whenever that was in May of 09. we were doing some stuff with ABC News. They were kind of following us, and Charlie Gibson, who was the host of World News Tonight, which is a big, it kind of was very interested in the space program. I had met him in his office a couple times to discuss how they could cover the flight, and he was doing these, these like look-ins to what was going on with our flight and our training, and then he covered it during. We actually got to speak to him during the flight, which was good. That was set up ahead of time, but I remember he wanted to talk. He wanted to interview us during our training, and he was in Houston for some reason and came to the Johnson Space Center. And as we're walking around, like Building 9, our big training building, we see the guy there, and we're like, "Hey, Charlie, what are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I wanted to speak to you guys. They wouldn't let me." So he put it. They said, "No, you need like a month lead time to arrange an interview with the crew." And then meanwhile, we walked around, we saw him, and we did the interview sort of just right there because he had a camera person with him, so we got to speak to him. But I was like, why would they not? We were available that day. Why would they not? This guy's the whatever it is, World News Tonight. It's a big network, right? It's the ABC evening news that a lot of people watch. Why would you not want to do that? And it's because you didn't have enough. I guess they have their own rules and everything, but it just seems to me, it doesn't make sense. And it's not like we're making these decisions; it's the media people that are making these decisions that they want. So that's kind of crazy. So you could have been interviewed. You could have been on Jay Leno and on David Letterman. So this is going back a ways. Neither of those guys host those shows anymore for the younger people who don't know about that.
This is back in 2010. So
but that's the Tonight Show on NBC with Jay Leno and the Late Show with David Letterman on CBS. So those are two pretty popular shows.
They had a few. You
couldn't even say you were showing favoritism. I guess you would have to throw Jimmy Kimmel in there for the third one. But you had two different shows. That's crazy. So you actually could have been on both, and NASA said no.
They said no. Yeah, but they also said no to the Colbert thing. So
what do you mean? Did you ask him? He wanted to interview. Yeah, okay, but something happened because I remember him doing it. So what happened?
That's right. So what happened was I got this email back saying it's inappropriate. We'll never let you on the show in a million years. It's political. It's controversial. They'll portray NASA in a bad light.
And just so you know, that's a different show than what he's doing now. Now he took over for Letterman on Late Show, right?
It was
that was a little more. That was pretty politically inclined, that show, if I remember.
The Colbert Report, because he was doing a character that was kind of modeled after a lot of the Fox News commentators, like a Bill O'Reilly kind of spoof thing.
And he wasn't. Yeah, so he was playing a character, right? He wasn't himself.
He was playing a character called Stephen Colbert, but it was a character, right?
Right.
Exactly, but. So he didn't want to do this, and I said, okay, but I just want to say that if you are afraid of him portraying NASA in a bad light, probably the surest way to bring that about is tell him, hell no, I'm not going on your show. Take a hike. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it if you want me to. But fortunately, somebody at NASA headquarters, it might have been Bert Ulrich or somebody at
good guy, Bert probably,
said whoa, and caught wind of all this and said, no, let's do this, right? And the upshot of this whole thing, when I get back, I got an email from the deputy administrator, which I think was Shanna. Was it Shanna Dale? Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Something like that. Yeah.
And she sent me an email saying that was like, so we did it. Okay, we did it. We did the interview. And she sent me an email when I got back saying that was like the best publicity NASA ever got since like Look magazine with the Mercury 7.
Life magazine. I think it's Life magazine.
Or whatever. Yeah. And now it's like, and so I have those two emails. I should like frame them, put them side by side.
Yeah.
So I did it. So we did the thing with Colbert, and it was really fun. It turns out a couple things made it funny. Well, the first thing was I'm up there on the space station, and I have no monitor, so I can't see him, right? And all of a sudden, they bring up the audio, and I'm just looking into a camera lens, and they bring up the audio, and I thought it was a warm-up act. I thought it was some guy just asking kind of general questions, and I said, but maybe this really is Stephen. I should probably just play along. So I kept going. I acted like it was the actual interview, and then like about 3 questions in, he said something with a characteristic accent. I could tell it's really him. I'm like, oh crap, we've been doing the interview all along. It's like, oh shit. And then
were you dressed appropriately? Did you have your makeup on, or they totally got you off guard?
I'm on the space station. I got no makeup. I got, you know, what do you want? I was dressed appropriate. Yeah, I had my spacesuit on.
That's good.
So we did the interview, and it was funny mostly because there's a time delay. So he would make a joke, and then I might be like serious, and then all of a sudden I'd be bursting out laughing with this time delay, and that actually turned out to be pretty funny. And so I wanted to do all my interviews when they come back with like an artificial time delay. we should try.
We should try that now. Let's do that now.
Should.
Yeah,
we should. So I did that up there, and then I got home, and that was the best one. And then he did a funny thing. I wasn't directly involved, but he did a funny episode when our toilet broke. Mm-hmm. And he did one where it was really funny. It was like he was talking about how, hey, we're all with you and stuff. And you know, I know it must be tough up there with no bathroom. And he's like, wait a minute, what's my rain stick doing here? And he pulled out one of those rain sticks, and he turns it upside down, and he shh. You know? It's like, we're all with you, Garrett. We're like a roaring stream, and they show a waterfall on the screen.
So that's why you were still on orbit?
I was still on orbit.
Oh, okay.
They sent that up to me. I watched that clip when I was up on and I was laughing so hard. I was just crying, which is a problem, as you know, when you cry up in space, because it doesn't roll down your face.
Right,
it just kind of all builds up. And,
yeah.
So that was it was problematic, but it was fun. And then I got back and we did an episode in the studio and that's a long story too. But before I go into that, how did you get involved? What was the first one you did? Was it Letterman or Ferguson?
The first one I did was Ferguson. After my second flight, shortly after that, I got invited to be on the show. Craig Ferguson we've become friends. He's a good guy. He's really interested in the space program and he's a pilot. He's a private pilot and he likes he's interested in aviation and all that stuff. So he had me on first, and I was on him, I guess maybe a couple times before I ended up going on Letterman, but he had me on, and it went well, and so he had me back, a bunch more, and it was kind of fun. What was interesting about the build up to it was I had a interview with his producer, and I spoke to a couple of my friends who are actors who had been on his show, and I said, and he said in general what they told me was that they're going to talk to you ahead of time and see what you want to talk about and ask you about, what's a good, and come up with stories or what you might want to talk about. And then they'll feed you, they'll ask you questions related to those stories. They'll kind of feed you the line so that you tell your story. So it wasn't necessarily going to be kind of an impromptu interview. But they didn't you don't do that with him. That's what I was told. But then I got on the show with him, and it was a complete free-for-all. I mean, none of the stuff that we talked about, he just went, he just kind of went into it. And I was wearing a flight suit for that first one. That's what, NASA thought would be a good idea for me to wear. And they wanted me to wear one. So I wore a flight suit. I didn't do that for the other ones. So we started talking about that and others. And we just got into it, and we just kind of went off in a different direction. And wherever we want to know. And then it was really fun. The Letterman, and he had me back a few times, and I've been on another show he invited me on a show called Join or Die. After he stopped doing the Late Late Show, he did another show with the History Channel, and he has a podcast on or something on Sirius XM Radio. I've been on that a couple times with him. So I haven't heard from him for since the pandemic at least, but
we should get him as a guest.
I think he would love to. He would love to do it. He is really into this stuff, and he's a very funny guy. A good guy. I really liked him a lot. And anyway, so that was that one. The way I got on Letterman, though, was really because of you guys. I was down at your launch as a family escort. I think I was your extended family escort, maybe, for your flight. And Bert Ulrich, we mentioned his name twice now, was the PR guy, the public relations guy at NASA headquarters. And I was a Letterman fan. I actually flew a DVD for David Letterman for his show because I was a fan of the show. Like you were, I think before we got on camera, you were saying how you flew a script from a show that
30 Rock.
You enjoyed, 30 Rock, and so I flew this Letterman DVD and returned it to the show. I'm not really sure exactly what happened to it. I asked Dave about it. He wasn't really sure. But anyway, since I was down there and a fan of the show, Bert Ulrich asked if I had time between being at the launch for your families to show Letterman around and his family on a tour. And so I was able to do it. I couldn't watch the launch with him because I was needed over with your mom and whoever else was over there. But I wasn't going to be around you guys. And anyway, so
and hanging out. And you have to admit though, that hanging out with my mom was much more exciting than hanging out with David Letterman.
It would be, and David Letterman would agree. I don't think there's any doubt. So remember, I sat next to Bueno's mom during your launch, which was kind of fun. But anyway, so I was. What happened? I'm lost track now. Anyway, so I hung out with him, and it was really fun. Like he was just, I think the first sign I knew I was going to be okay is he's there with his wife Regina, who's just terrific, and his son was there, and they had like some friends from school, and he had a couple of the doctors that worked on him. He famously had this heart operation that saved his life, apparently. I don't know if he had a bypass or something when happened to him. He was like close to a heart attack, I think, and they saved him. And I became friends with these people. He had like some of the medical staff, the doctor that worked on him, and I think one of the nurses was there, and some friends, his kids, some friends from the kids' school, and some cousins and so on. It was a nice group of people, and the kids were great. And Dave, I think the first thing that made me realize that we're going to be all right here is that we were going by the SLF. And do you remember with when the birds, to scare the birds off, Garrett, from the SLF, because they would land, there was a lot of wildlife around there, and they were afraid of the shuttle training aircraft having a bird strike because there's so many birds around. Do you remember what they used to do? They used to shoot a shotgun. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They would shoot a shotgun. Yeah. So I don't know, somehow.
No, and to be clear, they didn't shoot the shotgun at the birds.
No.
They just shot it up in the air to make noise.
Yeah, no. It was blanks. It was there. The noise would scare them away.
Yes.
And so I told him this story. I go, they shot this shotgun to scare the birds away. And he goes, oh, we do that every time Regina's relatives visit. He said it like that, right? And so his wife just kind of smirks and looks at him, and he's cracking. It was really funny. I mean, it was funny, this guy. So then it just became we just joking around the whole time, which was really fun, and his kids were great. And so we kind of became friends over this. We had a he invited me on the show. I mainly through his wife. We exchanged emails and I ended up speaking at his kid's school a couple times, and when I was in New York, and I still stay in touch mainly with Regina, but Dave a little bit still now, but anyway, he invited me on the show after we had this experience together watching your launch. Probably about a month after your launch, I was able to come in, and that was really interesting for me. It was a different experience than Craig's show because it was just a bigger. I think it was just a bigger show. It was more people would watch it. It was the main late night show for CBS at the time, and he was very popular. And I knew right away as soon as I got to the studio, it was the Ed Sullivan studio where they now film Colbert, right? Because he took over the show. But I remember getting out of the car, and it was like all these people taking pictures of they would the paparazzi would hang out there. Or the journalists, I guess, not really paparazzi would, and they just took pictures of whoever was walking in, the guests that day. And so Julianne Moore was the other guest. And it was this band called the Young Pornographers was on there.
Oh, nice. And
for them, it was kind of cool to be there with them because this was their first big late night appearance, and they were practicing their song. And it was kind of overwhelming. I was in, it was really small. The Ed Sullivan Theater was really small. Like not a very big green room. It was very small, and in the little room that you're hanging. And Bert Ulrich was with me. He came up from Washington to make sure I was going to be okay. And I'll tell you what I remember is I was sitting in. And I became friends with the band a little bit, and we're talking in the green room. But I went to go do the makeup thing, and he had the makeup artist had Polaroids of people that she had done makeup for the show. So this is kind of an A-list show, right? I mean, he's got, President Clinton and Barack Obama, politicians, and then they've got, Tom Hanks and George Clooney, and all these people are up there, and I'm looking at this saying, why am I sitting here?
Yeah.
That was the thing. And as that's going on, it was kind of cool. This new pornographer musician guy goes, hey, Mike, Dave's talking about you. And so I went over to, I got out of the chair, and he was going on about how he loved the space program and how he enjoyed meeting me and how great it was down at NASA. And all of a sudden I thought this was kind of cool. Like he was really into it. And his wife told me, we had a screening of the IMAX movie. Our IMAX movie came out about that same time. So we had a screening for Dave and his family. Dave couldn't make it to the screening that day, but Regina came with all the kids and, some of the parents and stuff. So we had a pretty good group there. And she came up to me and she said, Mike, I got to tell you, I've never seen Dave so excited about a show that he is tonight. And I was like, well, who's the other guest? And he goes, no, it's you. She goes, he's really He says that he was
new pornographers are supposed to be really hot.
Well, that's what but she said something like, not to disparage any other guests, but she said something like he's kind of sick and tired of interviewing these really young people about their vampire movies. I won't go into any details on that, but that's what she said, that he was interested in having a more, like a conversation with me. And it was just wonderful.
Can we get at least one werewolf? Just one werewolf.
Well, that's what. They didn't. There was not one of those movies had come out, I guess, and so. But it was great. He really was just wonderful, and probably, I think, as far as an interviewer goes, to make you feel very at home and relaxed. There's a certain talent he has to connect with his guests, and he made me feel right at home, and it was great. And getting to know him and his family a little bit, and getting a chance to do that in New York. Because now I live in New York, but back then going to New York was always a treat, and going back home. So that's
not always easy. Not always easy. So I was traveling in New York to do my in studio because I did after I came back. We did the one in space, and they talked about the toilet. And by the way, when we did that one in space, you reminded me of something. There were a couple of NASA officials from public affairs. It wasn't Bird; it was somebody else that was sitting like in the studio when we're conducting the interview. Yeah. And at one point, Steven says, "Hey, you got some Russians on board, right?" Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we got Sergey and Oleg over here. And he goes, can we do something to keep the cold space race going? Can you challenge them to maybe a basketball game, maybe a thumb wrestling contest or something? Yeah. Can we just I just want to crush those commie bastards. And and the NASA people are like, you can't say that. They're our partners. You can't say that. Yeah. And then Tanya, the producer, turns around to him and goes, you do realize we're live, don't you? They didn't get that memo.
That's funny.
Oh, brother. But then I'm going back. So now I'm going back, and I'm flying from Houston, and there are these horrible thunderstorms that were over Jersey. And
isn't there always a storm over Jersey?
Not always. It's a very nice, bucolic place.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Garden State, man. Come on.
I'm sorry. Your home state.
So we can't get there. We land in Pittsburgh because and this, how often does this happen anymore? But we had to weather divert to Pittsburgh on a commercial airline.
It's very rare. They usually know what's headed. Yeah, they're pretty good with that. They don't go anywhere unless they know they can get there usually. Yeah.
So I get there and I call up and I get Tanya and the whole rest of the writers and producers of the Colbert Report, and they're in a bar and they are lit. They finished that night's episode the night before, and they're all drinking. And I'm like, I'm stuck in Pittsburgh, and they're like, we're gonna come get you. I'm like, no, you're not. no. And I ended up getting I got my phone. I'm standing down by the baggage claim, and I got my phone. I got the last rental car in Pittsburgh, PA. Okay, the very last one.
Where'd you go with it?
I drove it to New York. I got it. I got this car, and I'm on the phone. I hang up the phone. I turn around, and there were 3 other refugees that came up to me like, "You got a car?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Can we come?" I said, "Yeah." So you could come, but on 2 conditions. One, I'm driving, and the second thing is I'm driving fast. And so we get in the car.
Why didn't you just stay in Pittsburgh and take another flight?
No, I was going to miss the show. I wasn't going to get there.
You were trying to get. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying on the way back.
No. This is going to New York, trying to get to the show.
Oh my gosh!
And so I'm screaming down.
Now I get it. Okay, I thought they just really loved you and wanted you to come back.
No.
I thought you said on the way back. I don't know.
It wasn't that they loved me. They I don't know what they would have done on the show without their guest, right? So
the day of. This is the day of the taping.
Well, it's late the night before. It's like midnight the night before.
All right, okay, yeah.
All right, and the earliest flight I could have gotten on the next day wasn't going to get me the air on time, because you tape in the middle of the day, So we get in the car, and I take off down the turnpike, and I'm driving like a bat out of hell, and they're all fine with that, but they're like, hey, by the way, we're just curious, what's the hurry? And I was like, well, you ever watch the Colbert Report on Comedy Central? Like, yeah, we love that show. I'm like, well, I'm tomorrow night's guest. I got to get there. And they're like, okay. And so we made record time to New York. I dropped all of them off, and we stay in touch, by the way, with these like the other three people. I still get like holiday greetings. They share pictures of like when their grandkids were born. They send pictures out there. Like we're like a little club. Yeah. And I get there, and I get to my hotel. I take a shower, and I immediately go to the studio. And then they sit me down, and it was the opposite of what they were doing there with all the prep and stuff. I sat down at the table. I didn't have any chance to talk about much at all about what we're going to talk about. And then the producer goes, okay, I'll see you in 7 minutes. I'm like, 7 minutes? I'm like, aren't we going to talk for like an hour and then you'll pick the best 7 minutes? Yeah. They're like, no, we do this like it's live. We like the spontaneity. I'm like, oh crap. And next thing you know, here comes Steven. He's running over to the table and I'm like, 7 minutes. And then we did the show. It was great.
So was it more or less kind of freelancing the questions?
Yeah. Yeah. We did get together in the green room before we went out there. He came in and we
Colbert?
Yeah. Yeah. But in person there, just in private, he wasn't joking around. He was like really serious.
I didn't see Dave before. Greg Ferguson just came out to say hi when I was waiting in the wings, and then he went back. And we talked a little bit, even like during the commercial breaks with him. But with Dave, what I said earlier with Craig, it was like a free-for-all, whatever he wanted to ask. We would go through this rigmarole about what we were going to talk about every time I was on his show. I think I was on like 6 times or 7 times. And then I would show up in the chair, and he'd be like, Mike, what's going on? And we would just, wouldn't follow any kind of – so I thought that Letterman would be the same. And we went through this whole thing where, on the phone with the producer, all these different stories of what he could talk about and here and there. And he was like really taking notes, and he said, all right, these are the 10 I'm going to go to Dave with. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And as I'm walking on to into the wings of the theater there to wait with the stage manager for when I get called on, he goes, all right, Mike, I told Dave about these 10, and he's showing me like his chart of these stories, and he goes, he likes these 3. When you hear this, it means this. When you hear this, he wants that story. And when you hear that, I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. And I still didn't believe it until I got there. And then Dave said, tell me about this. So it was a little more organized.
Wow, that's a different way of doing it.
Yeah. The other thing that was interesting is that they asked me for photos. You ever see like he used to show like photos? Mm-hmm. Oh, look at you. Here's you in the Bahamas or whatever.
It would be like a real photo. He'd hold up like cardboard.
Whatever, but it was a cardboard photo of the.
Yeah.
I've seen him do that, but they said they wanted me to submit photos for Dave to refer to. Whatever was me in space or whatever. I think I had one with me in the Mets home plate or whatever we had. So we sent him. We sent like 10 of them, whatever, and they had these photos made up. They were on his desk. They were like these cardboard printed things, but we never got to them. And I said, no, we never got to those photos. And they're like, no, that's only if you run out of stuff to talk about. So that was kind of like his backup. I think to me, it seemed a little more like organized sort of, and not as much as a free for all. And he also didn't talk during in between. He talked to me after, but when we took a commercial break, he was doing his thing or whatever. I think he just likes to keep that flow going. So,
I think also maybe it just also needs a little. The other thing I find with these guys,
he might take energy. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. People think that these funny guys like Colbert or Letterman are like funny all the time, and it's like they can't help it.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually the opposite. I think when you're in a private setting with them and they don't have to be funny, it takes energy to be funny, right? You have to.
We should know what funny astronauts
we're expending right now.
Right.
I don't know how many calories I'm burning doing this podcast.
Well, I tell you what, Garrett, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. I think we should end it because our clock is winding down.
Well, let me finish my.
Go, yeah. Sorry, please.
I want to see if you agree with me on this. So like in private, you think they're going to be funny, and they're actually kind of serious because they're resting. You know, they don't. You can't be on all the time, right?
Right.
And so I've met with some of these guys, and they tend to be, you know, like when I met with Colbert, we had a really interesting conversation about the beginning of the Daily Show when Jon Stewart took over.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, but it wasn't funny. You know, he wasn't. But then you see him in a public setting. Like we went to an Emmy party here in L.A. for Comedy Central, and Simone was there, and she was dressed up. Simone used to dress in a very retro fashion. She used to wear like a lot of like 1950s dresses with cat's eye glasses.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And so Stephen walked up to her and he said, "Do you always dress like you're John Glenn's wife?" So he can be really funny when he's trying. But it's interesting that these guys, you know, and it's normal because you can't try all the time.
Right.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, at your launch, I thought Dave was pretty funny. He was pretty much, I think because his family was there, but kind of in, you know, his general way, like he's on the show. But yeah, I think you're right. They're not necessarily always like that. But I don't know him well enough to say, except the few times I've been around him outside of the show, he still was. But you know what was interesting about him? I would say that he's always looking to find out stuff. He's always asking questions. Like I hadn't seen him for a while, and when I first got to New York, I saw him. It was off the show, and he started asking me questions. How about this guy and that guy? What's going on with this and that? Like always kind of.
Always curious.
I think he was always curious, always kind of in like interview. I want to say interview mode, but always wanting to learn about the other person. And I think that's probably something that all those really good interviewers, whether they're news people, news journalists, or for more the entertainment side of it, I think, you know, they're about finding out about the people that they're talking to and what's going on, and that's what he kind of struck me, even in the few off-camera conversations I had with him. And Craig Ferguson is pretty much always kind of funny. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't spend enough time with these guys off the camera, but I had a really funny conversation with him and outside him and one of his, I forget, it was a big. Maybe it was like Lee Greenwood or one of those kind of country music guys that was about 9 foot tall with a big hat, I forget who it was, but just kind of funny. Anyway,
9 feet tall.
But you're right. But as to other guys, you know who's like Bill Nye, our friend who is on our podcast. He's kind of like, you know, you walk around. I've walked around Manhattan with him, just kind of talking, and then like a kid will come up and say, "You're Bill Nye," you know, whatever it is, and he'll kind of play that character. So it's almost like the science guy is his character. And so I guess it kind of depends.
That's not him all the time. Yeah.
No, he plays. All right, man. What else you want to say?
One other thing I want to talk about before we wrap this topic up, because we probably won't come back to it, is one of the really cool experiences I had was I went to the final episode, the finale of the Colbert Report when they wrapped.
That's a good one.
And so a bunch of funny. So first of all, it was like the cool, and then we had a party afterwards, and it was like the coolest cocktail party ever. Because just the people that were there were just fascinating people,
right.
And there were some like stars that we had, like James Franco was there, Patrick Stewart, who we talked about earlier today, it was there, and like Bryan Cranston and these other guys. But then there were all these other people, and the thing was, and I was hanging out with Tim Meadows. Remember Tim Meadows?
Of course,
Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And he was talking about like how there were all these people there that the big fear was you would miss the opportunity to meet somebody because there are lots of people there that you wouldn't necessarily recognize by face, right? Like so, like I'm talking to this guy, and the question you always want to ask is, so why are you here? Were you promoting your book? You know, you try to open it up without just asking like, who are you?
Yeah.
But I'm talking to this guy, and it eventually came out that he was a mountaineer. And it turns out I figured out I was talking to Ed Vistris, who you might have never heard of, but this guy was the guy that was on Everest when Krakauer, you know, the Krakauer story about Into Thin Air, when they had that disaster on Everest. And he was filming in IMAX, and he had the camera crew put down all the cameras, and he like single-handedly saved like a dozen lives that day by going up there, climbing up there without oxygen and pulling people down from the summit. Cool. Yeah. And that's the guy, and he's just like hanging out there like against the wall, just some dude. Yeah. And it was just a great. It was really fun. And Willie Nelson was there, so I got to thank him.
Oh, cool.
weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I told him the whole story.
Yeah.
He thought that was funny. And I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson was there. He taught me a trick on my iPhone that I still use today, and about how to get up the camera really quickly. And then who else? I mean, it was just so much fun hanging out there. Ben and Jerry were there. Big Bird was there. Cory Booker. People from all sides of the political spectrum were there. Grover Norquist was sitting next to me at one point. So I mean, it was just like it was just so great to have a chance to talk to all these really interesting people. Yeah. And Ben and Jerry brought a lot of ice cream, so that was nice too.
Ah, cool. Where was the party?
I forget the name of the place. It was some venue around Midtown, kind of near, somewhere down around Union Square, but I don't remember exactly the name of the.
A little more downtown.
It was some big building that we were on the inside of. Yeah,
cool.
But it was a really cool group of people. Rick Ocasek and Paulina were there. She was and we had and I remember talking to Mandy Patinkin. I
cool,
think you got to know him too, right?
Yeah, I did.
He was in a show with my wife. So my wife was a child actress. Simone and her sisters. They were in Evita, and he was. I think he played Che Guevara in Evita, right?
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So she came up twice. I talked to Mandy Patinkin, and I also talked to Jon Stewart. So here's a true story. I'll end with this. I went up to Jon Stewart, and I said, "Hey, there's something I got to tell you." So, so this is a true story. So way back in like the 80s, when Jon Stewart was just first getting a start on, he had that show on MTV. I forgot what the name of that show was, but he had some like game show or something, a talk show on MTV. But he was like this little kid. He was like, no big deal at the time. And my wife was walking home from work, and she passed by, and there's this guy hanging out. And I'm telling the story to Stewart, but I didn't mention it was him. I just said, hey, my wife was walking home from work one day in the 80s in Manhattan, and there's this guy hanging out in the doorway of a bar, and they make eye contact, and she continues walking, but then she looked back, and he was totally checking her out, like head to toe, like oogling her or whatever, and he goes, "It was me," and I said, "Yes, it was you." How dare you? And he goes, let me guess. She's your wife. And I'm like, yes. So I got him to record a little video on my phone apologizing. And he said, Simone, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Did she forgive him?
Oh, yeah.
She
forgave him in the moment because I think she thought he was cute.
Oh, okay.
I think she's got a thing for short Jewish guys. I don't know.
And she ended up with you.
Yeah, exactly.
There you are. All right, man.
Yeah. All right.
What else? Mandy Patinkin. Did you ask him to do that thing from The Princess Bride?
No, I didn't want to go there.
That's what I. So I did a simulator ride with him when I was very early in our training. Like we were doing like astronaut candidate simulator. So we'd get the sim in the middle of the night. Like from 8 to midnight. Was when we were doing this, and it was Paul Lockhart and Stephanie Wilson and me. And I think it was Lisa Reed was our instructor, and she came up to us. She goes, I need to get you guys' permission on this, but we have a guest that wants to ride with you today. And I'm like, I don't even know you needed our permission. What do we know? And he go, well, it's this guy, and she described him as like a Broadway singer, actor.
Oh, that's true.
It says Mandy Patinkin. I'm like, Mandy Patinkin? He's the guy. He was in Chicago, Hope, I think, at the time, right? And but he was from the Princess Bride. He's the guy from the Princess Bride. He's on Indigo Montoya from The Princess Bride.
You killed my father.
Paul Lockhart. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Paul Lockhart is like, he goes, Paul Lockhart's from where's he from? He's from Amarillo, Texas. So he says, does he sing any country? And we're like, nah, he doesn't sing any country. And Stephanie Wilson's like, I don't know what it is. So anyway, I'm like, I was the only one really excited about meeting this guy. So he comes in and I go, you're the guy from The Princess Bride. And he goes, yeah. I go, can you do that thing? And he goes, hello. And he gets into the car, goes, hello, my name is Indigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Just like that, like with the face and everything. And then he stops.
You did that well.
And he was, I always do. I love that line. So I go, that was great. Thanks, man. I go, do people make you do that a lot? And he goes, yeah, all the time. I do it all the time. No problem. So, and he
I
said,
know. Yeah, I always feel guilty though. It's like I was also at that party. I was hanging out with like the New York Times columnist, like Paul Krugman. I was talking to him for a while.
Oh yeah.
And I was, you know, and it's not like I was, you know, I'm not going to ask him to do like an economic analysis for me.
I was a research assistant. I was a research assistant for that guy. He was on a productivity committee at MIT, and I was a research assistant, and he was on that. He was on that. Him and a bunch of other really smart guys. It was kind of cool. But so you don't want to ask him to do that, but it's okay to ask a guy to Jon Stewart to make a frickin' video for your wife. That's okay.
He owed me.
That's all right. Well, Manny Patinkin owed us. He owed us. So he was on our turf. He was coming in our simulator. We were going to get evaluated. So maybe that's why I felt okay doing it. But I know what you mean. Yeah, you hate to ask people for stuff. But he was on our turf. So yeah, I mean, I go walking into a Broadway show and he wants me to do something for, I don't know, show him how to fly a spaceship. I'll do it, So when you're on that
you
turf,
owe him.
He was on my turf, right?
Yeah.
He was on our turf, so he was all right. All right, man. Anything else?
No, I think we're good. I think that covers the late night.
Yeah, that covers our late night escapades, or at least some of them. There's more, but that was
at least so far.
So far.
Until we take this shtick alive and we do it, on the CBS Late Show or something.
There you go. We have yeah. Sounds good. All right, man. Right. Let's sign off, Garrett. We'll get him next time. Thanks for listening, folks.
Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe.
See you next time.
Bye, everybody.